I'm Reginald. I'm also known as Demcat, and I was inquiring about the possibility that the U.S. government is using a lot of resources to build underground cities. Now, I was fascinated by this topic when I came across a RT story talking about Russia and how the Russians wanted to build 5,000 bomb bomb shelters around Moscow because they wanted to make sure they had more shelters for their population. I thought that was really, really fascinating. And I was wondering if there were any type of efforts to create underground cities or anything like that here. Now, granted, they weren't underground cities, they were just bomb shelters, but it just got my interest. It piqued my interest. And of course, I saw Jesse Venture's TV show, Conspiracy, where they talked about 2012 and people spending a lot of money and resources on building underground bunkers, and they talked about the possibility, well, of cities, underground cities. And I have somebody on the phone. I let him introduce himself, and I believe he has some information about underground facilities here in America.
Okay, hey everyone, and thanks Demcat for giving me a call about this. I'm glad I could help you and your viewers out. My name is, stage name is Bon Secore. That's BonSecore. I'm primarily heard on LTR, libertytreeradio, sometimes, and I do help out on the Dutch Jones radio program as Giron One. And Demcat posted a thing about the underground cities, and that is something that I have some experience in as far as the procurement of certain items for underground cities. I myself have never actually been inside one, but I do know people that have been there, and in a previous career line of work, I worked in contract procurement for certain items that were going to go into the underground cities. And Demcat, was there a certain area you want me to touch on?
Well, yeah, you say you knew people who were actually there, but how did you meet those people, and how much do you trust their opinion on what happened?
Okay, well, one of my relatives works at two of those facilities, and he's an engineer, and he works at the one in Boulder and then flies back and forth between that one and another location that I'd prefer not to say, just for his career, you know. And basically what that relative does is he is in charge of like aircraft maintenance for one of the cities out in Boulder. And Boulder is actually what we might call a succession city. Sometimes they use that phrase. Say if something catastrophic would have happened, say unfortunately, like if DC or like LA or something like that would be taken out, Boulder would become like a capital.
I see. So it's sort of like, if the president can't do his job, then the vice president steps in. The vice president can't do his job, then it's the Speaker of the House. It's the same thing, but it's with cities instead of just politicians.
Right. That way you have
line of succession.
Exactly, and also, like, of course, we all know who FEMA is, and
Federal Emergency Management Agency.
Correct.
For those of you who aren't in America.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. And actually, I am FEMA certified. I have the equivalent of an associate degree through FEMA Emergency Management, which I took when I was in school in 2008, and that was kind of coinciding with my communications degree, so those two kind of go together a little bit there. And basically, with FEMA, we know that for those of us like Demcat, myself, most of your listeners, and then for those of us outside of the U.S., FEMA has the United States set up into different regions. Now, within each one of those regions, there is a director, an assistant director. So in the event that just something like out of a science book happens, a science fiction book happens, those directors and assistant directors would become president and vice president. So let's say like the whole cabinet got taken out, and then people in Congress we couldn't find. Then those people would, those directors would take over, or they would be what like, I hate to use this phrase, but like almost like a regional fiefdom, where you'd have the different regions, and then each region would have a president. So, but I doubt that would ever happen, at least in our lifetime. So, but some other things that I've come across when I was working on the inside, and none of this is like uber secret or anything. You can all look this up. Anyone can. There was a large amount of spending going on last year for preparation. There was $600 billion contract that went into Denver, and that's on top of everything that they're already building. You know how they have the underground city in Denver? We saw that on Jesse Ventura's program. Well, with all of our money being ones and zeros on a computer screen, the contract procurement office within the government that's just it. It's ones and zeros. That's it. There's nothing really backing it up, so they can spend however much they want. Now, a lot of our elected officials in D.C. will say, "Hey, we're going to argue over $55 billion on defense or on transportation." Well, that's a drop in the bucket, because actually the government spends $55 billion just on defense every single day. So, I mean, it's what we see on TV is just a microcosm of what's really going on in the real world.
Why are they spending all this money on these underground bases or underground cities? Are they just precautions in case there is an emergency? Or
Yes,
is it...
there's two sides to the government, and anyone in the Navy will even tell you that there's two sides to the Navy, and I'll explain that. There's a side of the government that says, okay, we're going to go with Plan A and just say everything's going to be fine. If something weird happens, we'll do what we can. We'll try to make the best of it and try to fix things, and everything goes on. Well, then there's a second side of the government. I wouldn't say a shadow side of the government, because some of those guys are kind of weird, maybe evil. But there's another side of the government that says, okay, in the event that Plan A just stops abruptly, this is what we're going to do. And this is why we have underground cities. We want to... of course, there's a hierarchy of people that are chosen to be in these cities, scientists, engineers, certain government officials, military personnel, and then people from academia who can help keep things going in a civilized culture, and then there's the rest of us that might be chosen to go in there. Sometimes we've seen that in movies, that sort of thing.
Do they have to have people already in there right now?
Right.
So what are they doing? Just working on the cities, building projects, or what?
Well, a friend of mine who works in one of the intelligence agencies had mentioned this, and I don't know if this is true or not, but just to go along with, what are the people in there doing? There is a theory that there have already been people in the underground cities for generations. And these people are kind of like the backup of the human race. So let's say like a catastrophic event like an asteroid, or if the Yellowstone volcano just took out all of the U.S., but once the dust had settled, here come these people rising from the ashes and say, okay, we're going to repopulate the U.S. or the world, etc.
I mean, can people really survive down there for years without the sunlight? How do they make up for the vitamin D exposure and all this basic stuff that you would get just breathing regular air, just being exposed to the things that you would normally be exposed to? Like, for example, if I spend all my time away underground, my immune system may not be adapted enough to the environment above surface. I may not be exposed to the same type of bacteria.
Yeah, either honestly, I'm not sure how they do that. You would probably think either maybe they get antibodies, or how people get vaccines, that sort of thing. Maybe they have artificial sunlight. Obviously, when they come, if the time arrives where they have to come up to the surface, it's kind of like almost decompressing in a submarine. You have to adjust to it, or take your time with being on the surface and all that. So that I'm not really sure how that works.
Well, how will they keep a secret like this? I do know that the government was successful in keeping the Manhattan Project a big secret. They had thousands of people involved in that. Thousands of people involved in developing the atomic bomb. They simply compartmentalized the information by having one person build one part of one project, and another person build another part of another project. And most of the people didn't really know the overall scheme, the overall plan, but they were able to have thousands of people involved in this project without most of them really knowing what was going on. They were able to maintain security in terms of they were able to keep it a secret. So how will the government be able to spend this much resources? Well, all these resources on these underground cities, assuming there's a lot of them, I don't know how many, without more people finding out about them.
Yeah, I think it's more they just use the hiding in plain sight method, and how you talked about how there's like thousands of parts being made, each at a different area, and no one really knows what's going on. I would see that in the contracts that I would process. You'd have one company, say, like where you are in Flint, Michigan, do bolts, and then like they'd order like 1 billion bolts or something, and then a company out in Sacramento would do the other parts, and then someone else, and who knows where, would do another part to it, and everyone just thought, oh, okay, well, all right, so you need this many things, okay, well, just chuck them out. So that idea that you brought up, that's actually true. How like parts and stuff are made in different areas, where they spread it out. There's only probably a dozen or so companies that will actually physically make like complete components, and usually those are the same, like what some people would call New World Order companies that we already know, that are already tied into the government so much. And then as far as people not actually believing in it, I mean, look at the movies that we're seeing nowadays. And some of the ones that came out in the 90s, they think, oh, it's just Hollywood. It's like, and then sometimes they're actually telling us something. So a lot of times it's like, oh, these people aren't going to believe everything they hear. And so usually, sometimes the government is going to intertwine with Hollywood, to say, okay, well, not a whole lot of people are going to believe it, and then we'll have mainstream people say, oh, we had all these professionals on that we interviewed, and they said it doesn't exist, but then it really does sometimes. So
Yeah, at this point, I'm just speculating. I'm just trying to gather as much information as I can, because I haven't actually been in an underground city, and I don't know I've heard the rumors or the theories about the Denver airport being used as a means of masking a greater underground project. But I'm really fascinated by the topic, and I really want to create a discussion with people. So this is why I wanted to really talk about this. Is there anything else? Can you tell us more about your direct experiences with these type of programs?
Sure. What I would do in my former career was contract procurement. We would get certain orders in that would come in, and they wouldn't be appropriated at all. I mean, it would be like, if you want to call it black budget, sometimes it's called non-appropriated funds, which sometimes is designated for like just hourly work for the government instead of like actual appropriated funds, which might be salaried work, etc. So let's say, for example, there was one order for 600 Humvees, and it ran through a household name company who sold the Humvees to China through a wholesale company in Michigan. And for some odd reason, why would China want to buy 600 Humvees from us? It doesn't make sense. So then there was one for an electrospectrometer, a big giant thing that shoots a beam down and can analyze stuff. That was like another $2.5 billion that went to an actual underground facility. I wouldn't say it was a city, but underground facility here where I'm at, somewhere in Ohio, and that was for scientific research in case something like an asteroid would have fell out of the sky. A lot of other things that I saw were items for food storage. Sorry about that, Tim. I was just being beeped on the line. If you heard a beep.
Oh, okay. I thought we lost you for a second. Sorry, go ahead.
I just have a friend that was back from Iraq that's calling me, but that's okay. I'm going to call him here when we're done. Basically, Mountain House Foods. Back in, I want to say that was April of last year, the Department of Defense
2011?
bought $2 billion worth of Mountain House Foods. There wasn't even that much in existence yet. Production was going like crazy, and you couldn't buy Mountain House Foods for a while unless you had like a store that was already stocked up. And then, let's see, Dimcad, you've seen the High Points, right? The High Point pistols?
Oh, yes. They're a low-cost weapon. They're the ugliest guns I've ever seen in my life. But
yeah, it's kind of like they didn't finish making them on the molds, before they ran them through the press.
Well, they use a metal that has to be extra thick because it's not made like the Glocks or whatever. Anyway, I forgot the story behind it, but they're like $150.
Right.
Very cost-effective. A 9mm 45 caliber pistols.
Right. Well, the government, the Department of Defense, they bought 400,000 High Points. That's why anyone who works at High Point over in Lima, Ohio, has no problem getting as much overtime as they want. They originally bought 200.
Why in the hell would they buy 400,000 High Point pistols? Though?
Okay. Well, that's what I said.
And is there any articles we can find on the internet that points to this?
I could probably find something and send it to you.
Cool.
I know that a friend of mine has the actual blacked out contract for it.
Yeah, as many articles you can find about this stuff, I would really love it. But yeah, why 400,000 from High Point?
Okay. Well, there were two things. There were two orders for like 200,000 apiece. High Points nowadays, the new models of them really don't need to be maintenance that much. The manual will say, don't clean anything except like the exterior of the weapon, and then just run a minor scrub through the barrel, that sort of thing. They don't need to be maintained as much, so they're really good for storage. So those actually went for the first 200,000 went for strategic defense, and somewhere it didn't say where the actual delivery location is. And then the Army bought 200,000 of them to give to the Iraqis. So instead of buying like a $700 or $800 Beretta 45, they gave the new Iraqi police and the Iraqi Defense Forces these High Points, so it can get sand in it the whole bit, and it's somewhat cost effective. So, which the government being cost effective is kind of an oxymoron, but you know what I mean. So.
Yeah. So 200,000 went to the Iraqis, and 200,000 went to Civil Defense Force or domestically. Who's going to be using these again? People in the military, or maybe people in these bases, or?
That's what I concluded.
That's a question.
It was like people in the underground underground.
But why would they need pistols though if they're planning on staying down there?
Exactly. So that.
For when they come out of it, I mean, it seems to me if you're going to spend all this money on all this stuff, these bases and everything. I don't know about you, but I prefer a Glock. I mean, that's just my bias right there. By the way, I don't have any experience with a High Point or SIG or anything else. But have you ever shot one of them? Are they fairly reliable?
I'm actually I'm on the list to be a High Point distributor, mainly because I'm going to be running a FFL table, and my thing is because I've been working gun shows recently in the last year and a half, and I'm trying to I do like a more of an inexpensive equipping table, that sort of thing. So and I do safety courses for my church, and that's what I start people out with. So something inexpensive that they can start with, and then they work their way up to the Glock 6, etc.
I've never had a gun safety course for a church.
No, just my church members.
Oh, okay.
Congregation members.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry if that came out weird. So.
Well, I mean, even that, I haven't heard anything like that. Anyway, I was gonna take us off subject, but anyway, that's pretty fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, thank you for sharing this information. Again, what's your stage name, your username?
Stage name is Bon Secore. That's BONSECORE. And I'm just now building my YouTube channel. Reginald, I had talked to you about what camera you use and what kind of movie software you use, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And the one that you mentioned to me, it was back ordered, so that's why I haven't got my page up. But my YouTube page is going to be Bon Secore #1. So, and then I'm usually on Liberty Tree Radio.
At libertytree.com or what?
That is libertytreeradio dot the number 4 mg.com.
All right.
You can also hear me on Indiana Freedom Talk Radio, and that's indianafreedomtalkradio.com.
What do you usually talk about?
I usually talk about survival, preparedness, food storage, and on occasion certain weapons that I come across that are quite unique. So.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure you're being recorded and we're doing a video right now, but just so the audience knows, you do know that, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, okay. I just want to prove to the audience, but thank you. I really, really appreciate the information. It's a pretty interesting topic, and I want to hear what everybody else has to say about this. So, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, and don't forget the future belongs to those who prepare for it today. Why is the government pouring this many resources into these alternative projects? And what's the scope? All right. Well, yeah, man, thanks. I appreciate that.
No problem.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Yeah, but you have my number, and I try to do blog TVs every Sunday. Well, I was sick last Sunday, that's why I didn't do it. But I might do it another day other than Sunday. So you'll see a preview if I decide to do it during the middle of the week. So I like to do that every once in a while. And so yeah, you've been prepping basically.